Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are going to begin tonight's Police Reform and Reinvention Task Force Public Forum with some brief comments from County Executive George Latimer.
Hello, I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Welcome to the second of our virtual public hearings on the discussions before our task force that we've created on police reform and reinvention. We've had a session occurred last week, and then tonight we're doing something a little bit differently. We have a virtual public hearing, which is what we're part of here, but as well we have 5 locations across Westchester County where there will be in-person testimony delivered. And for those of you who may be watching in one of those locations, we have groups of people at the Riverfront Library in downtown Yonkers. We are at the City Council Chamber in the New Rochelle City Hall on North Avenue. We have a group that is with us at the Field Library in Peekskill. We also have a group that's here in White Plains at the Quaropus offices, Board of Elections conference room, and then also at the Mount Kisco Library. So from each of those different locations, as well as from the virtual community that we have, we intend to get additional public comment, which will be of value to the members of the task force. We're very fortunate that Mayo Bartlett and Leroy Frazier have agreed to co-chair the task force. They are both lawyers by profession. They both served as assistant district attorneys in the past, and with a variety of experiences in the area of law enforcement. And we have a very diverse group of people on this force, including our Commissioner of Public Safety, Tom Gleason, the Deputy Commissioner, Terrence Rayner, and we have other members of the law enforcement community, the clergy, the activist corps. We have 2 members of the county legislature that are with us, the Honorable Terry Clements of New Rochelle and the Honorable Colin Smith of Peekskill. And we're very glad that you're with us again to give your ideas and your testimony, all of which will be part of a report by the end of the year that will be delivered to my office as well as to the Board of Legislators for their discussion and debate, and then ultimately to be submitted to Albany, to the state government. Thank you very much for being a part of tonight, and we welcome your opinions.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Leroy Frazier, and I'm very happy to be here with you tonight so that we can get some input from you about your ideas and information that we can use in order to put together this report for the county executive, the legislature, and even the governor's office. The idea here is not so much tonight for an exchange of ideas, but for you to tell us your thoughts on what you'd like to see in the area of police reform. We are looking at the task force to gather best practices from all over throughout the state, throughout the county, and all over the United States, if not the world. However, what we want is for you to tell us what your thoughts are so that we can then synthesize those, put those together within the report. Thank you for participating, and we welcome your ideas, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. My name is Mayo Bartlett, and I'm pleased to be here with my colleague Leroy Frazier on behalf of George Latimer and the Westchester County government. And we look forward to working with you and taking your ideas as we decide to formulate new policies within Westchester County, and as Leroy said, as we propose a plan that we will submit to the state. And as we look at best practices, certainly within the country and beyond, our objective is to provide a working frame, the gold standard of policing, which will allow for police in the community to, again, be able to work together and to do so with transparency, accountability, and with trust so that we can strengthen the various communities within Westchester County and beyond. We look forward to hearing your comments, and we look forward to continuing our work, again, to formulate the best practices in policing. Have a nice evening.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. Now we're going to briefly hear from several members of our task force who will spend a short amount of time introducing themselves, and then we'll move on to the public comment forum. First, we're going to hear from Dean Horace Anderson. Dean Anderson, can we get a few words from you so we can make sure we can hear you okay?
Certainly. Can you hear me all right?
Fine, sir. If you begin your remarks now, that'd be helpful. Thank you so much for coming.
Certainly. Good evening, everyone. My name is Horace Anderson. I'm the Dean of the Elizabeth Howe School of Law at Pace University, known traditionally as Pace Law School to people around the county. I'd like to thank County Executive Latimer for convening this task force, and I really appreciate the opportunity to try to play some small part in getting us to a better place when it comes to policing and public safety. And I look forward to hearing all of your thoughts this evening and really just listening and learning. So thanks again, and looking forward to an interesting conversation.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dean Anderson. Next, we're going to hear brief remarks from Mr. Michael Hagan, who's joining us also. Mike, can we get a couple words from you just to make sure you're coming through okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine, sir. If you'd like to begin your remarks now, that'd be helpful.
Sure. My name is Mike Hagan. I'm the PBA president of the Westchester County Police. I've been a police officer for over 30 years. I'm here on behalf of my membership. We're here. We're willing to listen. We've always been part of the solution, despite the narrative of those with an anti-police agenda. We are an accredited agency, which means that we have met the higher standards for many years. We're a department that has for many years used dash cams. We have body cams. We maintain statistics on car stops. We have a civilian board, a police board that oversees what we do. We are also under the purview of the Board of Legislators Public Safety Committee. I think it's important to reiterate that this is a forum to discuss the Westchester County Police, what we're doing right, and I believe we do a lot right, and where we can improve. It's not to address the larger issues that are addressed in the appropriate forums. Again, we're willing to listen, but it's a two-way street. The last forum was high on criticism, and it was short on viable solutions. Reimagining policing must recognize the realities of policing. Okay, we live in a world where people do prey on others. There's no doubt about that, and they don't always choose to go quietly. Okay, when it's time to take them into custody, we need to just realize that reality. Many of the policies that have been proposed have already been instituted in some of the larger departments throughout the nation. We don't have to look any further than our southern border to see the large spikes in crime, the large spikes in shootings, the large spikes in homicides. It's having negative effects on the communities that we serve, okay? Despite the naysayers, we're not adversaries to our communities, okay? When things get tough, when people are in trouble, and when people need help, they pick up the phone and they call the police because we're the ones who will go there and we're willing to help. We're always willing to help. We're willing to listen. We're here to serve our community, okay? And, whatever suggestions we hear, we will try to do better. We will always try to do better. That's the job of police officers all the time, always striving to do better for our community. Thank you.
So much for joining us tonight, Mike. Next, we're going to hear from Robin Schleisinger. Robin, I've just unmuted you. Can you give us a couple words to make sure we can hear you okay?
Thanks, Copper. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you perfect. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, all. My name is Robin Schlesinger, and I'm a resident of North White Plains for the last 10 years, and I grew up in both Yonkers and Scarsdale. I'm an attorney with a solo practice that has become focused largely on the LGBTQ plus community, and particularly with transgender and gender expansive individuals. I'm a member of the Westchester County LGBTQ plus Advisory Board, volunteer for the Loft LGBT Center in White Plains. I just want to say that I'm pleased to participate on this task force and to relay the concerns of the members of the people of Westchester and its LGBTQ plus community on this critical set of issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robin. Now we're going to move on to our public forum component. So we're going to go through and I'm individually going to go through all of our speakers. I will unmute them, prompt them to speak, and then each speaker will have roughly about 3 minutes to speak. Now, if you go a little bit over that, that's quite all right. But just as a general warning, if you are going to go over it, we would prefer if you try to wrap things up a little bit quickly. Just kind of try and have things wrapped up by 3 minutes, 30 seconds, whatever, if you can. Worst case scenario, I'll give you a little prompt if you're running a bit far over. And if your remarks are a little bit more expansive, please do feel free to submit them to us digitally. I will post our Police Reform Task Force email address in the chat, which can be accessed through the icon that looks somewhat like a word balloon. This entire event is also being recorded and will eventually be uploaded to YouTube later on down the line, just like our previous public forum. So now, with that, we're going to move to our first speaker. Our first speaker is Ervan Caesar. Ervan, let me see if I can find you here very quickly. And 1 second. All right, Ervan, I've got you here. I've just unmuted you. Can you give us a few words to make sure we can hear you okay? Mr. Caesar, sir? Hello, Ervan Caesar. Are you there, sir? Okay. We're not getting any remarks from Mr. Caesar. I will circle back to him and see if there's some sort of technical issue he's having. But for next, we're going to move to Miss Nina Blauner. Nina, 1 second here while I find you. Okay, seems like Nina actually hasn't joined the call either. So next we're going to move to the third person on our list. That's a Mr. Dax Armstrong. Dax, I've just unmuted you. Can you give us a few words to make sure we can hear you okay?
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you perfectly. Please feel free to begin speaking. You've got 3 minutes starting now, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Before the time, is this video or is it only audio?
Only audio, sir.
Oh, okay.
There is a video component for people who have joined through, the WebEx service, but don't worry about showing your video, sir.
That's fine. Okay, so hello, everyone. My name is Dax Armstrong, and I'm a member of the Yorktown for Justice Task Force. In addition to this, I'm a guidance counselor at Yorktown High School and the co-chair of the Yorktown Central School District Cultural Awareness and Equity Task Force. It's also important to note that in addition to these groups that I've just highlighted, there is also the Yorktown Central School District Alumni and Student Coalition, which is newly formed, as well as a Lakeland group. All of the groups I've mentioned are actively and aggressively working in Yorktown with the local government and education board to move closer to racial justice, equity, and equality. These are groups that I endorse and that I will work collaboratively with, and we hope that you will do the same. It's an honor for me to be here, and I want to thank all the parties involved in organizing this event for the opportunity to address you here today. Police reform is a major issue. Long before this country had 50 states, slavery was here, and long before this country was established, slavery was here. The students that I teach are too young to have seen segregation firsthand, and they're too far removed from the realities of Jim Crow just 60 years ago. And their schools haven't taught them about the slave codes or the black codes or vagrancy laws or convict leasing. And they don't understand the relationship between slavery, segregation, and the harsh policing of people of color today. The reality of that relationship still exists, and it's not going to go away no matter how many people deny it or vilify Colin Kaepernick or the BLM movement. I can't tell you how happy I am to see everyone here today acknowledging the problem that this issue is and addressing it head on. And I want you to know that I support you in this issue of police reform, and I will be an ally in any way that I can. My group has asked that I pose some questions to your group in the hopes that we can improve what we're doing in Yorktown. Are you guys willing to take questions, or are you only taking suggestions and comments?
Hello, Jack. We are actually only taking comments at this time. Thank you.
Okay. So I listened very closely to what everyone said, and I appreciate the comments. And I specifically was listening to Mr. Michael Hagan, and what I think is interesting to add to his conversation and his piece is that what's important is not just training, or a lot of officers today are talking about training. I think education is also important. And like I just previously highlighted, this connection between our history with slavery and segregation, and an understanding of how that's connected to present-day policing is really important. And for officers to understand that connection, to be educated about that connection so that they can properly police and serve the communities that they're in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I'd like to also briefly recognize two other members of the task force who joined us today. There's Reverend Doris Dalton and Mr. Robert Tucker of Scarsdale. Many thanks to both of you for joining us today. Thank you, Dax, for your comments. Next, we're going to move on to a Miss Teresa Hardaway. Teresa, just bear with me here while I find you on our list. It doesn't seem like Teresa has joined us today. Teresa and anybody else, if I do pass you over, it is hard for us to identify exact phone numbers which have called in. Please feel free to email us at the Police Reform Task Force email, which I'm now putting in the chat. That email is policereformtf@westchestergov.com. Very, very easy. So that'll be in the chat right now, and everybody who's on phone, please do feel free to shoot me a quick email at that address, and I will correspond with you to make sure that you're able to speak. Since we can't find Teresa, we're going to move on to Mr. Robert Hoffand. Robert, just one moment here. No. Mr. Hoffand appears to be joining us now. Hello, sir. My name is Copper Crane. You've just been called into the Westchester County Police Reform and Reinvention Task Force's public hearing tonight to make your comments. Are you able to speak now, sir?
Yes, I am.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. I'm going to put your timer on for 3 minutes starting right now.
Oh, it's starting now? You want me to come down to the library?
No, sir. You can just start speaking. Thank you very much for joining us.
Okay. It was not too, well, actually, it was quite some time ago. I was a New York City police officer, and I worked with some very dedicated police officers who were part of the New York City cadet program. The cadet program enlisted teenagers in high school, and they mentored them. The teenagers would be able to do some filing and clerical work in the police department. They got paid less than what the civilian employees would get, and they were part of the building a culture within the police department. And then these cadets ended up doing well in their careers. So it's something that I often thought that may be worthwhile looking at again in trying to create a better police department, having a cadet program. And would you like to know anything about it? Else about it? Did I explain myself correctly?
Sir, this is just to give you a little bit of context. This is actually not meant to be a question and answer forum. This is just an opportunity for you to give public comment. You have another minute and 25 seconds if you have anything you'd like to add to your remarks, sir, before they're submitted to the record.
Well, the other thing I might mention is that the Nassau County Police Department would require 2 years of college, and the college could be in really anything, any subject, and that was able to attract police officers who were able to not only graduate high school, but then they were also able to have the fortitude to continue on for another 2 years of college. And I think as far as Westchester County is concerned, I don't believe that there is a college requirement for Westchester, last time I looked. And that may be something interesting to look at to attract a higher, perhaps, quality individual to be part of the police department.
All right, sir. Thank you for joining us. Is that the body of your remarks there?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, sir. So next, we're going to be moving on from Robert to Mr. Ed Riley. Ed, let me see if I can find you very quickly. All right. Unfortunately, Mr. Riley does not seem to have joined us tonight, so we'll move on to our next one. Mr. Jim Russell. Jim, let's see if you're present tonight. Yes, Jim, we've just unmuted you. Can we get a few words from you to make sure we can hear you okay? Mr. Russell, sir? Hello, Mr. Jim Russell. We've unmuted you here. Giving you an opportunity to submit your public comments to the Westchester County Police Reform and Reinvention Task Force. Are you there, sir? All right. It seems like Mr. Russell is not joining us tonight either. So we'll move next to Miss Kelsey Paget. All right, Kelsey, I've just unmuted you. Can you give us a few words to make sure we're able to hear you okay?
Hi there.
Hi,
Can you
Kelsey.
hear me?
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to start your timer right now.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kelsey Paget. I live in Mount Pleasant. I spoke last week, but I'm here again because there's 3 new points I'd like to bring up in addition to what I said last week. Somebody else mentioned last week that there were 43 independent police departments in Westchester County. Now, if you look at our population, I know we're going to get new numbers with the census, but our last numbers were we had 967,506 residents in the county, which is less than 1 million. But we have 43 departments. Now, does that seem correct? Seems like a lot to me. Do all of these departments share the same training, policies, and oversight? No. Why are there so many? Can't we combine some of these police departments? Why, if I am in Elmsford and the police are called on me, I could be arrested by the Elmsford police, but also by the Greenburgh police? It makes sense when you've got like county, state, federal police, but we've got, town, village, hamlet, lots of stuff going on here. Maybe we can have less police departments. Okay, second thing I want to say is I'd like to say that holding public forums like this that are not very well advertised, you're only going to get opinions from those who are highly motivated to give their opinions. This is a hard thing to find. Everybody who cares about this issue, lots of people who care about this issue have no idea that this forum is happening. And that's no way to govern. You on this board need to get out there into the community where over-policing is occurring and speak to the actual stakeholders. You speak to Black people, Latinx people, houseless people, advocates for the mentally ill, domestic abuse survivors. I know that there are a lot of things amongst the task force to try to do that, but I would urge you to do more. Holding more forums, advertising them to different communities, or just literally going out and asking people their opinions. Those voices aren't in this room. They need to be heard. It's your job to go out and find them, not their job to come to you. And lastly, I want to address what Michael Hagan had to say. I want to challenge you on the idea that when people need help, they call the police. Many people, solely because of the color of their skin, do not feel safe calling the police. And that is your problem to fix. Instead of coming to this forum with hostility toward what you call naysayers, you should humble yourself and listen. You said this is a two-way street. It's not. You serve the community. Thank you.
All right, thank you for joining us tonight, Kelsey. I'm going to put you back on mute now, and we'll move on to our next speaker, Mr. Mike Alter. Mike, just one moment here while I find you on our list. All right, Mike, I've just unmuted you here. Can you give us a few words to see if we can hear you okay?
Yeah, is this good? Can you hear me?
Yep, this is perfect, sir. I'm going to begin your timer right now. Thank you so much for joining us.
Wait, hold on a second. Is this, wait, is this still?
Take your time, sir.
Sorry.
Are you ready now?
Yeah, I wrote something down, I just have to find it. There we go. Yeah, I timed it to about 3 minutes, so hopefully it'll be exactly.
Very good, sir. I'll start your timer now. Is that acceptable?
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Mike Alter, and I'm a graduate of Pleasantville High School and current resident of Banksville and North Castle. I was born in Mount Kisco, lived and worked in Lewisboro, Eastchester, White Plains, and Chappaqua. Westchester is thoroughly my home, so I want to commend those seeking to make it a better place, especially the activists pushing for change and the county leadership who convenes this task force before the governor required local governments to do so. But in that spirit, I must say I believe the remit of the task force doesn't go far enough in simply primarily looking at training reforms at the county police academy. Reforms risk being too little too late for too many situations. If we're to have a real conversation about public safety in this country, we must reckon with more than one part of one part. History here is painfully relevant. Much has been said regarding how many police departments, particularly those in the South, originated in part out of old slave patrols. Those of us in the North, however, can't simply disregard our origins by flippantly asserting a greater distance from slavery. Replaced haphazard organizations, northern cities created permanent professional departments to ensure public safety through policing and modeled themselves on the nation's first two such examples, Boston and New York City. Both cities looked abroad, however, for how to establish their forces, as the largely unarmed London Metropolitan Police had recently been founded by Sir Robert Peel. Peel is considered the founding father of modern Western policing. He's famous for the saying, "The police are the public and the public are the police." The police being only members of the public who are paid to give full attention to duties that are incumbent on every citizen in the interest of community welfare and existence. The principles on policing, placing civilians at the center of public safety, have been adopted by others around the world. However, sometimes those very principles only accepted by force. Peel's first attempt at police reform was an armed reactionary force in Ireland meant to pacify a legally disenfranchised population, collect tithe money from Catholics to fund the established Protestant church, and support Protestant upper-class magistrates doling out unduly harsh judicial sentences. Does this sound at all familiar? Policymakers here in New York were directly influenced by those examples abroad. For several years, New York City's police jurisdiction, which at the time included Westchester, as the Bronx hadn't been fully separated, had two forces: municipal force controlled by the Democratic machine in City Hall, and a metropolitan police controlled by Republican power brokers in Albany. The so-called professionalization of policing in New York began with these two forces attacking each other and civilians in the streets. Racial, ethnic, religious, and sexual systems of repression funneled and exacerbated all these conflicts. This is part of New York's example to America. This is part of our legacy. If we want today to recognize that policing is just one part of public safety, alongside things like prison reentry, drug rehab, and others, we must go beyond this remit. One of the proposed ideas when the MIPD was founded was an elected civilian oversight board. A real policing reform would be to transition the Westchester Police Advisory Board to a fully elected, statutorily superior body to the commissioner. This structure isn't unfamiliar to us. We as a society already agree that education is an important enough policy area. We create entirely separate governance boards to hire superintendents and oversee their activities. Public safety is at least that important. So much so, similar to various police ombudsman's office, Westchester's internal affairs and the OPRSI should be separated out from the department, so another layer of accountability is added to investigations of official wrongdoing. Additional training and structural reforms can be found in the Patton Report, 1999, and the Report on the Future of Policing, 2018, two papers on how all kinds of rural, urban, and communities plagued by histories of violent division can move forward together. So while I applaud the needed efforts to make sure the Academy is employing the best possible practices, additional work is vital. Conversations around reallocating funding, making policing a much smaller portion of the public safety mission, and enacting more structurally accountable democratic reforms will go further towards achieving what we all want: Westchester safe and healthy for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for joining us tonight. Next, we are going to hear from a Miss Kim Gold. Kim, if you'll just bear with me while I track you down on our list here. Okay, I believe Ms. Gold is going to need a phone call to join us, so bear with me while we call her into tonight's event. Hello, Miss Gold. Welcome to the Westchester County Police Reform and Reinvention Task Force Public Forum. I have just called you in through our service here. Could you give me a few words to make sure that we can hear you okay?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you perfectly. Thank you so much for joining us. Just give me one moment here while I get your timer set, and you've got 3 minutes to speak starting now. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've lived in Westchester County for almost 20 years, and I found out about this task force kind of by accident. So I kind of agree with one of the previous commenters that it would be great to kind of spread the word so that a lot more community members could know about it. And my main concern is what is the basis that we're reimagining the police force on? Like, are there specific problems that we're trying to solve? I'm sort of more interested in, what are the problems that we're trying to solve and coming up with actionable, solutions, and we can sort of come up with metrics so that we know if we're actually solving the problem rather than just sort of coming up with, broad-based general things that, most people are in favor of. They don't want police brutality or they don't want racism. Those are things I think everyone agrees with. But, what are we specifically looking to do? And I'm also very concerned that this will be demoralizing to our police forces because, I just don't want to run into a situation where the police, who are really our only line of defense against crime, they're the people who we call when there's no one else to call, when someone's trying to kill us or break in our home. And I don't want to run into a situation where a task force to reimagine the police ends up being demoralizing to the police force and thus leaving communities vulnerable to more crime. Because it's, to me as a suburban dweller, looking at the cities right now and looking at the amount of crime that there is, I really don't want the suburbs to turn into that. So I'd like to, I think, tread very carefully, trying to solve whatever problems there are that we have, and meeting the needs of community members who feel vulnerable, but also making sure that we preserve our police force and that we, and that we realize and respect that, they don't know if they're coming home at night, when they do their job. It's different from my job, that's pretty easy. I want to make sure that that is sort of at the forefront of things so that we can kind of meet all needs, and end up with a safe place to live for everyone. And that's pretty much, I think that's pretty much all I have to say on the matter. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you for joining us tonight, Kim, and thank you for giving us your comments. As of this moment, that's actually our last speaker currently. As such, we are, if you would like to speak, please feel free to either email me at police reform, that's police, P-O-L-I-C-E, reform, R-E-F-O-R-M, T-F, at westchestergov.com, or just please indicate so within the chat here in the event, in tonight's forum. I will get you up very quickly. It looks like we actually have one person who's interested in speaking so far. That's a Mr. Scott Sullivan. Scott, just bear with me for one moment while I pull you up here. All right, Scott, I've just unmuted you. Can you give me a few words to make sure that we can hear you okay?
Sure, Scott Sullivan here. How are you?
I'm good, sir. We can hear you just fine. I'm going to start your 3-minute timer now. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just a little bit concerned about a task force that's reimagining the police without defining a problem. And the premise that police in Westchester County, because that's what we're talking about, are racist or are in any way, rogue to the, and that there's an overwhelming problem that exists involving police brutality, injustices towards society. I'm unaware of them. Maybe they do exist. I don't know, but they should be highlighted if they do. I'm unaware of that being the case here specifically in Westchester County. So when we say reimagine, I think you need to define a problem before you try and fix a problem. I mean, I'm just hearing generalities like we had slavery, therefore the police are bad. I'm asking in the chat, so somebody please make that connection for me. I'm willing to listen, but I just don't think it's been defined or established or had any facts put behind it that warrant these global statements that are just Ferguson happened, therefore Westchester must have problem with policing or what have you. So in any event, my recommendation, this is just a recommendation, that the task force, the people on it who are trying to solve a problem that I don't think is yet defined, they should go to the police academy. I'm not talking about a full police academy. I'm talking about go though, learn what happens there, the training the cops do get. Go and learn what the job is all about. It's not just enforcing the laws. It's the way it is, and maybe this is the reimagination. It's handling society's ills. It's dealing with mental health issues. It's dealing with many, many societal issues that the government does shoulder, homelessness, and compassion and taking care of people, not just enforcing the law, is what my experience has been with police in my life. I understand other people have other experiences, and they're valid too. But again, I just don't know what problem we're trying to solve here in Westchester. And if you're going to solve the problem, once you identify it, I think you got to become educated onto what is happening in the police world with that training, because I think that is what, if there are any changes to be made, right, it's to get to the core of what who our police are at the earliest time in their career and train them the way we want them to be. If there's a problem in the way it's happening now, that should be identified and worked on. But I think you need to kind of go there and see it and learn it to understand it before you can reimagine it. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us tonight, Scott. I want to briefly recognize two other task force members who are out in the wind here. One of them is Mr. Kenneth Chamberlain, Jr. The other is Mr. Thomas Luzio. Both of these gentlemen are also members of our Reform Task Force, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. Next up, we are going to hear from a Mr. Gregory Smith. Gregory, just bear with me while I pull you up here. Or Jeffrey, I apologize. All right, Jeffrey, you're unmuted now. Could you give us a few words to make sure we can hear you?
Gregory's actually my brother. That's a strange thing.
Well, sir, apparently I'm not very good with names, so thank you for joining us, Jeffrey.
Good evening. I have been listening to the presentations at the forum, and I appreciate the breadth and the urgency of a lot of the comments. What I'd like to speak about this evening is my experience as an attorney representing tenants in public housing and housing authorities. This is a jurisdiction of policing which is very fraught and ill-defined. I need only to refer to the killing of Kenneth Chamberlain in White Plains Public Housing, where he pressed his medical alert and the medical alert contractor realized it was a mistake, and they said, okay, we can go away now, and the police did not. The police knew of a criminal history of Mr. Chamberlain, and they turned an alert into what happened was his execution. And it was particularly disturbing because it happened at a time when the police that were coming from clearing the bars on American Avenue gathered because they said, oh, something's happening at public authority. And it was an overreaction. They would have gotten into his apartment because they had the keys. They were provided by the housing authority, but he had a key lock, which they had to break first before they penetrated. So this shows that there is a real problem in interfacing between local police and the jurisdiction of the housing authority. There is also a problem because our buildings departments and code enforcement departments, and I've had this experience in Peekskill, New Rochelle, and here in White Plains, they will not enforce in federally funded projects. They say they have their own inspections. Well, we saw what inspections were good for in Grant Manor, which had a serious fire, and it was found out there was never any code inspections there for over 20 years. So this is something that I would urge the task force to look into. Another problem is that management in some housing authorities collaborate with the police to have arrests made, particularly of young black men and families, in order to obtain a predicate of criminality that they can use if they want to intimidate or evict the family. It was so serious that part of my representation came to challenging notices that were sent so that the bogus nature of some of these claims could be disclosed. So that I think this is a ripe area because I have been able to find neither in Peekskill, New Rochelle, or White Plains a formal agreement between the police department and the public housing authority as to jurisdiction. There is collaboration, but it is not, as a matter of law and due process. One of the worst areas is the ban order, which is essentially a housing authority edict that they don't want someone on the property because they're deemed to be a danger to the residents there. That ban, with no other due process, is enforced by the local police department in all too many occasions. An attempt to remove someone from the property has resulted in felony charges of resisting arrest and assaulting a police officer. So there are several areas of law enforcement and policing where our police forces are involved and should not be, or if they are, their involvement should be subject to policies and procedures and not simply some self-interested arrangement with the housing authorities. So,
Mr. Smith, you've gone a bit over the 3 minutes. Would you like
okay,
an opportunity to wrap your comments up?
I think the recommendations I've made and the plea for attention to this, I will stand on that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, sir. We're going to move on to our next speaker then. Our next speaker, we're going to circle back to Mr. Jim Russell. He's emailed us to let us know that he believes he's gotten his audio working. Hello, Mr. Russell. Can you give us a few words? 1 second here. Hey, Mr. Russell, would you mind trying now, sir? Sir, I believe you may actually be muted on your end. Could you maybe check your phone and give us a few more words? Mr. Russell? Mr. Russell? Unfortunately, it seems like he's having some difficulty. Mr. Russell, here's what I'm going to do to solve this problem. You have given us your phone number, so what I'm going to have the service do is I'm going to have it call you at the phone number you provided us, and then you'll be able to speak through your telephone. So I'm going to have that call go out in just 1 second. All right, Mr. Russell, you should be receiving a phone call right now. Great. Okay, here. 1 second, sir, while we get to your phone here. All right, Mr. Russell, could you give us a few words?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Thank you so much for coming, sir. I'm going to start your 3-minute timer right now.
Okay. So I've been a resident of Westchester County for over 40 years. And
Mr. Russell, one thing very quickly. If you could just mute the audio coming out of your computer, it's actually creating an echo with the phone, and that's actually going to get worse as you speak. So I'm going to restart the timer here. If you could just take care of that very quickly.
Okay.
Thank you. It sounds much better now, sir.
Well, I've been a resident of Westchester County for over 40 years, and all of my experiences and observations involving the Westchester County Police Force have been positive. I don't believe that there's any need to reform, reinvent, or reimagine the Westchester County Police Force. I do believe that there's a need by the county, by its critics, to come to terms with the factual data involved in many of the issues that are being discussed. For example, an important paper by Harvard professor Roland Fryer entitled An Empirical Analysis of Racial Differences in Police Use of Force, in which he found no racial differences, especially in officer-involved shootings. It's also necessary to acknowledge the disparate rates of violent crime among different population groups. And finally, I also had some difficulty in locating the information about this evening's forum. I think even at the present time on the Westchester County website, it has a different date of the 5th, and there's been other notices with a different date of the 13th, I think. But I do think it's good to allow residents to speak out on this important issue, and that all views will be considered.
Thank you very much, Mr. Russell. Now, one small clarification, not to turn this into a question and answer session, but the 13th was actually our previous forum, and the 5th was the date we canceled due to Tropical Storm Isaias, just for a little bit of clarity on that one particular issue. Next, we're going to move on to a Mr. Royce Battleman. Royce, just bear with me while I find you here. I've unmuted you. Could you give us a few words now?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, Ms. Royce Battleman.
Yeah.
I apologize. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll start your 3
That
minute timer
happens
now.
a lot. No worries. So first, I just want to thank George Latimer and the task force for the work that you're putting into this issue. I think it's a serious issue, and I appreciate the time and commitment that it takes for all of you to take time away from sort of your daily lives to really focus on this issue for the benefit of all of us. And I don't take that lightly, so thank you. And also thank you to the facilitator. It's not an easy task, and you're doing a fantastic job. I would sort of echo what was said by the speaker before me, that I have only had positive experiences with the police force here in Westchester County. But I would also add that I recognize that I am a white, middle-aged woman living in a relatively upscale community, and that my experience may not be reflective of the overall experience of others in the community who may not be coming from the same position that I am. So I also echo what others have said, that I think it is important to identify the problem, and I think that therefore it's important for us to really study what are the practices and the outcomes of our police forces and understand them, and then explain those to the community with transparency so that we can understand whether there is a, quote, problem that needs to be addressed, what that might be, and what steps have already been taken historically and what is already in motion to address it. Having said that, even if the finding of any study were undertaken that did not uncover racial bias or other inappropriate systemic issues, I would say that even one loss of life or one loss of civil liberties as a result of bias or inappropriate actions taken by the police is too many, particularly in a setting that may not be set up to systemically address those issues. We often hear that form follows function. I think it's also true that function follows form. And it's important that any police system have appropriate education, training, and policies and procedures in place to protect all of us, no matter our belief system, our race, our gender, or our economic positioning in the community. There are programs out there like 8 Can't Wait that have been recommended to police forces across the country that are not specifically designed to address racial bias, but the implementation of these positive police procedures can have the result of improving the interaction of the police with the community generally and resulting in fewer unnecessary deaths and less unnecessary violence. I also want to say to this committee that I have heard very troubling rumors that I acknowledge are rumors about what has been characterized as a, quote, militarized armory in my town of Harrison. I've heard talk that in review of budgets and inventory at the Harrison Police Department, there are weapons-grade grenade launchers. Now, I want to be very clear, this falls into the category of rumor. I do not know if this is true, but I do believe that any task force investigating our police forces should explore the nature of the armaments that are available to the police in all of our towns, because in my opinion, it is not appropriate for any civilian police force to have those kinds of weapons. Thank you very much for listening to me. And again, I appreciate your time and effort on this matter.
Thanks so much for joining us, Royce. We appreciate your comments. Next, we have one additional speaker request, and then that's everybody we've got for the time being. If anybody else has an additional comment or would like to be heard, please feel free to indicate so in the chat, which can be accessed through the small icon that looks like a word balloon, or if you're calling in and you can't click the buttons because you're on a phone, please feel free to send me an email. My email is ccrane, that's C-C-R-A-N-E, @westchestergov.com, or you can just send your comment or reach out to me through the Westchester County Police Reform Task Force email, which is, again, the word police followed by the word reform, the letters T and F, again, westchestergov.com. Thank you so much for joining us all today, and we're going to move back. We are going to hear now from Mr. Gold, Miss Kim Gold's husband. So Kim, I've unmuted you now. Is your husband available to speak?
Yes. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you now. I will start your 3-minute timer now.
Okay, I have a few constructive suggestions, just because, I mean, obviously the issue is a managerial issue. That's what everybody is talking about. And that doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong, but it's always possible to try to improve things. So I'm going to make some, just a handful of constructive suggestions. One is people have talked about having social workers go out to deal with, nonviolent crimes. And that can be very helpful, but having a social worker go out with people who are, say, not mentally stable can actually be dangerous. So that social worker would probably, to be safe, would have to be in addition to somebody, to police officers. They might be able to funnel people in those types of situations into better and more cost-effective types of solutions, but anyway, but it is an expensive solution. Second possible solution is would be ongoing martial arts training for police. That actually is a more cost-effective solution. Martial arts training for police generally is known to be very short-term, currently mainly a couple of weeks, and they may go 30 years without continued training. But mandating ongoing training, they teach in martial arts, they teach de-escalation, which will reduce the violence. They teach greater precision and develop greater skill and precision in minimizing the harm to somebody. And also martial arts will teach basically compassion and patience, and as a result of that, reduce burnout and bad decisions. So this is, and obviously there's many different martial arts, and so there's a broad array of training methods available and a broad array of people that, with different needs, so you need to open that up. Obviously, a third thing, body cameras and car videos kind of goes without saying. A fourth thing is compassion training for police. That's another thing which can reduce burnout and reduce bad decisions. And then the last thing is there are ways of showing explicit support for the police when they do their jobs well, show it in a public setting. It will encourage the police. They will have a better idea of what is a good job, and the public will become better aware of police actually doing a good job. And that increased awareness will also improve their ability to hire, increase morale, and as I said, it will provide positive direction for the police force on what the community wants from them. So, instead of, attacking the police, you turn it a positive, and you see this type of management structure done in many corporations where they identify positive things that the police are doing and publicize it so that way the community knows the positive things that they're doing as well. I have heard some people talking about things like defunding the police. The issue is to improve the skills of the police, and improving the skills of the police is requires the exact opposite. You probably, to increase training, is
Hello,
going
sir.
to
Just to give you a heads up, you've gone a little bit over. If you'd like to wrap up your remarks now, we'd appreciate that. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay, but just increasing funding, and the last thing is avoiding what New York City did with as I think you know, the dangerous thing that they did where people can't do the safer types of controls of people, and will require New York City police to do more aggressive actions.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, sir. We're going to move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Miss Ashley Lowell. Ashley, I'm going to unmute you now. Can you give us a few words to make sure that we can hear you okay?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. If you'd like to begin your comments now, I've just started the timer.
I'd just like to introduce myself. My name's Ashley Lowell, and I go to Fox Lane High School, and I live in Mount Kisco. And I just wanted to make a suggestion because Mount Kisco, there used to be a police force specifically for the town of Mount Kisco, and it's now changed to Westchester County Police. And since that change, I just feel like the police have been very disconnected to the members of our community and the people who actually live in our town. And I think it's very important that our police force, they reach out into minority communities and get to know the people and get to build relationships with them in order to avoid any racial bias or assumptions they may make. Because I want to talk about a little experience that happened to me and my family members. We were walking from CVS, and it was like late at night, and we were getting some snacks because we had a sleepover. And unfortunately, we were followed by a cop for a very long time, and we were followed into our building complex and stopped and asked what was in our bag, assuming that we had looked into people's cars because he was saying that there was a case where a lady was saying that there was someone looking into cars with a bag. And it was extremely scary for me and my cousins because, especially knowing the climate that we're in today with our society and what we see on the news and people dying with small police encounters, it was a very scary thing for me and my cousins. And I think that comes from the lack of understanding the people in our town. And I think defunding the police has nothing to do with getting rid of the police. It has everything to do with redistributing that wealth into areas that are of high crime rates and schoolings and other stuff like that to prevent crime from happening. And I think that's pretty much all I had to say. I'm just trying to do my best to help my community and to help everyone and to help all the injustices stop in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Ashley. Our next speaker is going to be a Miss Rita Walton. We're going to have to call her in here. Just bear with me for one moment. Okay, we're giving her a call right about now. Just a few more moments here and we'll be ready to go. Okay, Rita, thank you so much for joining the call. Can we hear a few words just to make sure we can hear you okay?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you so much for calling in. We're going to give you 3 minutes to speak, and that timer begins right about now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My name is Rita Walton. I'm a resident of Westchester County for about 15 years. I raised 2 children here. I'm a librarian. I'm an activist. I'm a white middle-aged woman. I find it disconcerting that the police and the police unions, in the face of all of the uprising across the country from people of all backgrounds, older people, younger people, white people, black people, Latina people, Asian people, still persist in denying that there is any problem in the police force practices that they utilize. The police forces across the country seem to have a warrior mentality, that they are up against a very hostile environment and everyone is an enemy. I know on repeated occasions, I, as a white woman who worked at a law firm in Midtown Manhattan and dressed very conservatively, have been treated extremely rudely, with hostility, even laughed at and mocked at. And I think most folks are leery of the police. I would prefer not to deal with them. And this is talking as someone who is a white, middle-aged woman. I can only imagine what a young black male feels like in dealing with the police. So I think that the police and the police unions, it would behoove them to get on the right side of history on this issue and be workers for peace and workers for justice. Ultimately, they're responsive to the taxpayers, and they should be on the community's side instead of thinking only of themselves as this elite group, and they have to get each other's backs and make sure that they just protect themselves. It would be excellent if they would think about protecting and nourishing the community in the most positive way. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for speaking, Rita. We really appreciate your comments. As of right now, we actually have no additional speakers. Nobody's reached out to us by email, and we have no additional requests in the chat here on the call. So we will leave the lines open for the next 54 minutes happily to take any additional people who may come in. But until then, we have no additional speakers at this time. So thank you all for coming. In the interim, I will put the general flyer back up, and once we kind of take the flyer down, then you'll be able to know relatively quickly that we have an additional speaker. So thank you all so much for joining us. I am going to put myself on mute now for a short time. And when we have additional speakers, I will unmute the call and we will resume the public comment portion. Thank you so much, all of you, for coming, and we really appreciate the comments that have been submitted so far. One additional very important question we've actually been asked in chat here, which is a bit of a housekeeping thing that I'd like to quickly cover. Kelsey Paget asks us, is there a deadline for when people can submit comments by email? So comments may be submitted digitally to that policereformtf@westchestergov.com email address, which I mentioned a little bit earlier on the call. We'll be taking comment on that and retaining it for reference by our task force until this Friday. This Friday is August 21st. So long as you get your comments in by around that time, they will be retained and referenced by our task force. Again, if anybody would like to speak or give additional public comment, please indicate so in the chat or send us an email at the aforementioned policereformtf@westchestergov.com email address. Thank you so much. Hello again, everybody. We actually do have one person who's reached out and is requesting to speak, Ms. Rose Israel. Rose, just give me one moment here while I pull you back up and give you an opportunity to speak here. Everybody, we've got Miss Israel on the phone now, so just one moment here. Hi, Rose. Thank you for joining us. This is Westchester County's Police Reform and Reinvention Task Force. It's our public hearing. I just unmuted you. Could you give us a few words to make sure we can hear you okay?
Certainly. My name is Rose Israel, and I live in Pound Ridge, New York. And I'm not a middle-aged white woman. I'm an old-age white woman. Lived in Pound Ridge for about 50 years. I lived in the Bronx before that. But, I'm probably going to be the elephant in the room. And that elephant in the room is someone who wants to stand up for the police on both feet and give them the credit that they are due. Why is it that every time someone gets shot or arrested, they say, oh, the cops use too much power? What are you going to do if you're, okay, take you as a normal everyday person. If a man weighing 200 pounds comes at you and you say to him, please, stop, don't wave your arms like that. You're under arrest. Just take it easy. And he continues to do that. I don't say they have to use what you consider excessive force, but I can tell you right now that if I was a man and someone like that came up to me, I'd sure be kicking him or something. I wouldn't just say, okay, buddy, walk away. I know you're upset. Oh, I know that you have claustrophobia. Fine, we'll get you an open truck. The killing of that man was unconscionable. And for the first time in my whole life, I thought I saw what was racist and undue to try and get him under control. And then the riots started. Now, do you really think our police officers have to stand there like a bunch of dummies and not protect them? Number one, not protect the public, and number two, not protect themselves? They don't get paid enough. That's not in their pay grade that they should take that kind of abuse. What are we going to do with that? What are we going to do with the long term that it's not, white people that started this. It's they're raising their children to be afraid of the police. And my mother told me every day, don't go to near police, don't talk to the police. I certainly would run and hide when I saw a police car coming by. Even as a white woman, I would run and hide. That's what I was told. But that's not what I told my children, and that's what my mother told me. We were taught to respect the police, not throw bottles at them. So there has to be absolutely, and I agree with you, if this prejudice is out there, then we have to do something about it. But it can't only be the training or the police doing something about it. It has to come from the communities where the people live. They have to, when something goes on in their village or their town or their apartment building, pick up the phone and call the police. And when the police get there, they need to share whatever information they have rather than keeping their mouths shut. Because the only way to get the people that are doing this and rioting and everything else is to get them off the street. You want your child to be safe, then you cooperate with the police. And I'm sure there isn't a policeman around that would say, oh, no, hey, you're Rose, Chinese, I'm not going to help you.
Rose, you've gone a little bit over the mark. If you'd like to wrap
I'm
up
fine
your
now.
Comments. Oh, you're
fine.
okay?
Oh, yeah, I'm
so
okay now. I just want you to know, and I want everybody to know, I'm the elephant in the room. Our police have to be supported.
Okay.
Amen.
Thank you for your comments, Rose. Thank you for calling in tonight. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
I'm going to put you back on mute now, and we'll move on to our next speaker. That's Miss Sandra. Sandra, I'm not going to get your last name. I'm going to try it. It's Adarami. Adaremi? Did I get that?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Yeah, it's Sandra Adaremi.
Adaremi, I apologize. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your comments. I'm going to start your 3-minute timer now.
Okay, before I start, I just want to say your experiences as a white person do not define the experiences of everyone else. You can't reform a system that's broken. Attacking specific police and using the argument of good cops, bad cops does not fix the fundamental problem with the police system in the United States. When we say ACAB, we say all cops are bastards. Not all cops are bad. We are not talking about the individual people in those behind those uniforms. We are talking about those uniforms themselves. Policing is used to maintain power structures that are replicated in all major institutions in this country. The prison system, which is obviously interwoven with the policing system, was created to imprison Black people after the Emancipation Proclamation. Its original purpose is still reflected in incarceration rates today. Black and white people possess, use, and sell drugs at similar rates, but Black people are 6 times more likely to be imprisoned on drug charges than their white counterparts. To address what Ms. Rose Israel was saying, this is the reason why BIPOC folks are taught to fear the police. Changing which police are in system is not going to fix 400 years of institutionalized racism. Diversifying the police force is not going to fix 400 years of institutionalized racism. We have to overhaul these systems of oppression entirely. Racism is not just a problem of personal prejudices, which is why training itself is not going to work. These police officers need to understand what job they're taking on, the job that was literally meant to imprison Black people. Being a police officer was literally being a slave patrol. It's like 200 years ago. Like it's support. These are personal prejudices, but are supported by institutions and systems of oppression. It's not just going to happen by having a task force. Like I think someone was saying before, public safety, civilians should be at the center of public safety. And defunding the police isn't abolishing the police. It's a reallocation of funds, because at the end of the day, the police don't prevent crime. They come after the fact. They come after the crime has been committed. Someone said, well, don't social workers need protection against unstable people? Well, don't those unstable people need protection? Don't they need some type of treatment so that it doesn't get to the point that they would become a danger to society? We need to address problems before they occur, if that makes sense. We can't just keep putting a Band-Aid over a bullet wound by saying, okay, we need to just increase more weapons, we need to increase more police funding to protect everyone. Who are you protecting? Because all I hear is that you're protecting people in the suburbs, the white rich people in the suburbs. That's all I hear. I really swear I heard someone say the suburbs will be less vulnerable. Why is that? And also, Miss Rose Israel or something, you said that you were even scared when the police were passing by when you were little. Why should you be scared of the people that are meant to protect and serve? Don't you think that those people that are protecting and serving, don't you think that when even one death occurs at their hand that there's a problem? Okay, thanks.
Thank you for your comments, Sandra. That's the last speaker we currently have at this time. I'm going to go back and, we actually do have one additional speaker. That speaker is going to be Miss Nicola DeMarco. Nicola, I'm going to give you a call right about now, and you should be able to join the forum just fine. All right, Miss DeMarco, we've got you on the call now. Could we get a few words from you here?
Yes, it's Mr. DeMarco.
Mr. DeMarco, okay, great. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having this very, very important forum and for listening.
I'm going to start your 3-minute timer right now, sir.
Okay, sir. I am a guardian ad litem in the city of New York, and the reason I'm talking about my title is we were developed as a program after the Eleanor Bumpers shooting in 1984. She was an elderly Black mentally ill woman who was being evicted in the Bronx, New York. At that time, she was being evicted by the New York City Police Department, which is no longer the practice, mostly because of that particular case. Ms. Bumpers was mentally ill. She didn't understand what was going on. She owed less than $300 in back rent, and she was shot dead because she had lunged at the police with a knife. Now, I am part of a program that hopes to intercede by first helping these people who are mentally disabled or physically disabled to understand what is going on and to help resolve any eviction problems. This, of course, is more exacerbated in this COVID environment. And we replace much of the former police actions. In fact, police are rarely, if ever, called to an eviction. Now it is city marshals or in conjunction with Adult Protective Services, which is part of Human Resources Administration, as well as people like myself who are volunteer guardian ad litems. And I think programs like this should be expanded, and the people who are police, who are presently working, should be retrained and refocused, just as in the Eleanor Bumpers type case, to do things that are more appropriate to their training and their experience, and we can reduce some of the unnecessary conflicts that occur. And again, I appreciate this forum very much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to express my views.
Thank you very much, Nicola. We do really appreciate your comment. At this time, we actually have no additional speakers, so I will go back to monitoring the chat and our email service here to see if anybody else is interested in speaking. Again, thank you to everybody who's come out to listen to us tonight. We really do appreciate all this participation and all these comments. I'm going to mute myself again now, and I'll be back when we have more comments. We have about a half hour until our program is finished, so if any of you decide to jump off now, I wish you the best of a night, and I hope that you'll continue participating and paying attention to this extremely important issue. Everybody, we have one additional speaker. That's going to be Sayako Izeki Nevins. Sayako, just bear with me for one moment, and I'll have you on the call here. Hey, Sayako, I've unmuted you. Please feel free to speak. I'm going to begin your 3-minute timer here. Do you want to just quickly give me a word so I can make sure we've got you on the horn?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. I'm beginning your 3-minute timer now.
Great, thank you so much. I would like to say that someone earlier tonight mentioned that we do not know what the problem is with policing, which implies that there have not been enough instances demonstrating issues with the police system in the United States. To respond to that comment, I would like to name people from Westchester who have been murdered at the hands of police. Christopher Malone, Santos Borjugues, Roberto Martinez, Rene Javier Perez, Christopher Ridley, Danroy DJ Henry Jr., Kenneth Chamberlain Sr., Samuel Cruz, Raynette Turner, Jonathan Maldonado, and Kamal Flowers. Do you need proof of injustice here in Westchester? If you need proof of these so-called problems that need to be fixed within the police systems in our area, I urge you to get in contact with Henderson Clark. He is the brother of Kamal Flowers, who was shot to death by police in New Rochelle. One name on this list is one too many, but we don't have one. We have 11, and likely more that have not received even the slightest recognition. Police brutality is not a myth. It's an issue that we're facing in our communities. I would like to call out the white, privileged people on this call who have said that police are meant to protect. I'm calling upon you to simply listen to the experiences of Black, Indigenous people of color who must live within a system that was never intended to protect them in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sayako. With that, we have no additional speakers at this time. If anybody else would like to speak, do please indicate so in the chat, or alternatively send us an email at policereformtf, that's police reform, the letter T, the letter F, at westchestergov.com. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you all for these wonderful comments tonight. Thank you for sticking with us through all this time. We still have no public speakers, so with 3 minutes left, we are going to begin closing down. Thank you all so much for sticking with us tonight. We're going to leave the lines open for the next 3 minutes and close up at 8. We really appreciate all this participation. Again, we will be sure to continue circulating notice of these events on our county Facebook page, through the county newsletter. You can track them all also through the Westchester County website. All of these public forums will be directly uploaded to YouTube, to the county, Westchester County's YouTube page. Probably they should all be up by early next week. We will need to do some editing in order to sort of interspace all the different forums into an appropriate length series of videos. But all of these should be uploaded within the next week or so. Again, thank you all so much. It's been a pleasure. Have a good night, all of you, and stay safe out there.